every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past and life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love.
June 4th, 1989, my dear friend Don died in a car crash. He was 25 years old, and never before Don's death had I suffered the death of a man I was so in love with. Don was born here in Albuquerque, April 25th, 1964, about a month before I graduated from high school in Illinois. And back then, I was a very sincere Christian 18-year-old farm boy. I had never visited New Mexico. I did not know then that some men are in love and make love with men. I did not know that I was gay. If anyone had told me then that a baby boy just born in Albuquerque would become so precious to me, how could I have understood it? I met Don when he was 16. A few months later, I told him I'm gay. He was attracted to me. He wanted to have sex with me. I was very attracted to him. I wanted to have sex with him, but I turned him down because he was under 18. I did not want to risk getting arrested for having sex with him. Don was deeply hurt, and I was torn inside. And here is much of his letter expressing his anger for my refusing sex with him because he was under 18. He writes, first of all, I'm a young man, 16, and I don't see where age has anything to do with sex. If a man wants sex with me and I want sex with him, that's fine. But if a man wants sex with me but is afraid of my age, then it doesn't make any sense. A man is someone of 18 years old, so I'm not a man, but what or who I enjoy to have sex is none of anyone's business. When I went down that last time, I was hoping for sex. But now I know it can't happen. To answer your question, yes, I am sexually attracted to you. Are you sexually attracted to me? Second of all, I never plan to tell my parents anything at all that concerns my sex life, just the same as they wouldn't tell me about theirs. I could live a long time without sex if I wanted to, but as long as I can have it or give it, why should I stop? I've had bad results from sex, but I can't make a wall out of it. I think that gay sex as well as straight sex is wonderful, but I don't have to stop or alter my sex life because I am 16 years old. I want you to know that there is not a damn thing wrong with my thinking. Don, I'm sorry if this is a hostile letter, but you really made me mad. I should have been a little more understanding, and I'm sorry. Please keep in contact with me. Feel free to call. With love, Don. And this letter that Don wrote to me when he was 16 was the only angry letter he ever wrote to me, and I have many cards and letters from him. he did not realize the risk of arrest and prosecution for me because of the law, what I might have suffered, and the other risks to me and to him if I'd had sex with him when he was 16. June 22nd, 1983, when he was 19, Don and I made love in Denver, where he was living then. And the next morning, a woman friend of his asked me where I had slept. And Don spoke up. He had balls. He said, he slept with me. I wish all gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people had that kind of openness, honesty, out with their feelings. How attractive Don was. Lean physique, sexy voice, intense, passionate, curious, yearning for love. Don's mother was Chicana, his father Italian. Don and I never lived together as partners. He drank booze, he smoked cigarettes. I hate booze, I hate cigarettes. But I deeply loved Don. I was in love with him. His mother asked me to be in charge of his memorial service and to be an honorary pallbearer. I poured my heart into the songs I sang. Amazing Grace, Precious Lord, Take My Hand, Cordero de Dios, Yo te amo mucho. Back then, in 1989, I was still rather religious. I poured my heart into what I spoke in that service. People wept. His mother later told me no preacher, no priest would have done a better job. And the next night, after Don's memorial service, his white stepfather told me I never understood until last night. Apparently, his white stepfather meant he had never understood a man being in love with a man until he experienced the deep feelings I expressed for Don in that service. And Don's lover at the time, Kyle, whom I met for the first time ever at the funeral home, told me he had seen a picture of me that Don had, and Kyle had asked Don who that was. And Don said, he and I are very close. And Kyle asked Don, well, what does that mean? And Don told Kyle, you know what that means. Don's brother and sister gave me more than 30 letters and cards I had written Don for years, and he had saved. And as I later read them, I was so glad to see that I had expressed clearly my passionate, romantic affection for him. How terribly sad if we love someone and that person dies and we never told them how much we love them. Deep grief is a precious agony, showing us how much we can love someone. And before they closed the lid of Don's casket, I chose to be the last to say goodbye. I kissed his hands, I kissed his forehead, I kissed his lips, and I wept. And earlier I placed a small card near his hands for others to read. To my beloved Don, with eternal embraces and passionate affection, from Don Schrader. When my mother died in 1982, 7 years before Don, I mourned tremendously alone on our Illinois farm with sobs and yells. She was my all-time closest friend. Don's death in 1989 matured me to weep freely in public. Worse than suffering such loss would be never becoming close enough to anyone in life to feel such pain in parting and to shed tears in public with no shame. I've gone many times to Don's grave at Fairview Cemetery on Yale Boulevard Southeast here in Albuquerque. I've kissed the grass above his lips, above his hands, above his cock, and above his feet. When my mother died in 1982, when my dad died in 1994, I chose to be the last to kiss their lips before their caskets were closed. And as the old song says, save the last dance for me. Never be ashamed to show love for someone when they are alive or when they are dead. And I dedicate today's program to my beloved Don. Many kids have imaginary friends they talk to, especially if they have few real playmates. Many kids have imaginary friends they talk to, especially if every day they suffer constant hell at home. Many adults have their imaginary friend, God, in the heavens. And many adults pour out their hearts, their whole lives, to this imaginary friend, God. They pray for help in many serious situations. And if their imaginary friend, God in the heavens, does not help them, these sincere believers will defend their imaginary friend, God, with all kinds of excuses, saying, well, it was not God's will, or God is testing my faith, or in the next life after death I will understand why God chose not to do what I prayed for. Many excuses why God, their imaginary friend, did not help them in desperate situations. In many places for hundreds of years, I could have been tortured. I could have been locked up. I could have been killed by a mob of believers of whatever religion for saying what I've just said in the last couple minutes publicly. I humbly confess that I was a very sincere young Christian preacher 56 years ago, first in Virginia and then in Sterling, Illinois. And for many years, I publicly prayed to, preached about, sang about the imaginary friend, God, in the heavens. And with much help from many people, I slowly woke up to my religious fantasy, my delusion. At special family meals with my grandparents, they called on me when I was a teenager to pray the blessing before we ate. I'm no longer a believer in this imaginary friend in the heavens. I regret. I apologize for advertising this make-believe imaginary friend God. And make no mistake, I wish we had a fair, loving, all-powerful, real parent God who helped all people who desperately pray for help. But I refuse to swallow and advertise feel-good, make-believe bullshit. I want truth, as painful as that truth often is. One of my favorite poems, and I do not know who wrote it, entitled Handwriting on the Wall. A weary mother returned from the store, lugging groceries through the kitchen door, and awaiting her arrival was her 8-year-old son, anxious to tell her what his younger brother had done. While I was out playing and Dad was on a call, TJ took his crayon and wrote on the wall. It's on the new paper you just hung in the den. I told him you'd be mad at having to do it again. She let out a moan, furrowed her brow. Where is your little brother right now? She emptied her arms, and with a purposeful stride, she marched to his closet where he had gone to hide. She called his full name as she entered his room. He trembled with fear. He knew that meant doom. And for the next 10 minutes, she ranted, she raved about the expensive wallpaper and how she had saved. Lamenting all the work it would take to repair, she condemned his actions, his lack of care. The more she scolded, the madder she got. And then she stomped from his room, totally distraught. She headed for the den to confirm her worst fears. But when she saw the wall, her eyes flooded with tears. The message she read pierced her soul with a dart. It said, I love Mommy. Surrounded by a heart. Well, the wallpaper remained just as she found it, with an empty picture frame hung to surround it. A reminder to her, a reminder to us all. Take time to read the handwriting on the wall. I deeply enjoy crying tears of loving sadness. Sonny Jacobs spent 17 years in prison in Florida, including 5 of those 17 years on death row for murders she did not commit. And when she was proved innocent and released in 1992, it was too late for her common-law husband, Jesse Tefero, who was executed for the same crimes in 1990 before his innocence could be proven. Sunny became a certified yoga instructor, and Sunny gives credit to yoga for her survival. Think of it, 17 years in prison, 5 of those years on death row for a crime she did not commit, and her common law husband executed before he was proven innocent. She presents workshops across the country on survival yoga where she shares the techniques that she used to turn her solitary confinement, that hell, into a sanctuary. And drawing on yoga and her own life experiences, she works with people who are facing difficult transitions, including strokes and other disabling circumstances. She also speaks regularly against the death penalty and works with young people to promote nonviolent conflict resolution. Sunny says, "Life has given me many challenges, which I choose to take as opportunities to learn and to grow. I learned this on death row. I choose life. I choose health. I choose forgiveness. I choose love. And that choice saved me from bitterness and hatred that would have destroyed me from within. I've dedicated myself to an end to violence in all its forms. And this is the way I honor the lives that were sacrificed along the way. This is the way I give back to the universe. Love is the answer. Fear is the enemy. We must choose the world we want and work toward making it happen every day in our lives." Sadly, Colin Powell was very high in the U.S. military, very high in the U.S. government. Colin Powell had the blood on his hands of millions of people in the Vietnam War, the Gulf War against Iraq, and the later U.S. war against Iraq under George W. Bush. Colin Powell grew up in New York City, and many of his neighborhood's kids became violent street gang members. He did not. Many gang members killed and died on those mean streets. Many gang members went to prison. But the awful, sad, bloody truth is Colin Powell was heavily involved in the blinding, the crippling, the murder of far more human beings than all those violent street gang members combined. But because Colin Powell did it as a big shot in the U.S. government, the U.S. military, millions today consider Colin Powell a success, a hero, a model of African American achievement. Does anyone in U.S. mainstream newspapers, radio, or TV say what I've just said? Anyone? And sadly, most of them are addicted. The news people are addicted to the U.S. war machine. No one is born evil. Colin Powell was not born evil, but he became a war criminal, And sadly, he became a war criminal step by step, little by little, as many people, white and black, Republican and Democrat, cheered him on. Sadly, Colin Powell celebrated black people being accepted and promoted in the most violent gang in the United States, the U.S. military. And of course, many white U.S. presidents, many white U.S. generals are also war criminals. And for thousands of years, empires all over the world, now including the U.S. empire, celebrate when former victims, as black people were in this country for many decades, for centuries, become accomplices in the empire's atrocities. And the same could be said of Native Americans, who were the horrendous victims of this empire's evil, murder, and land theft, and many Chicanos. Empires celebrate when former victims become accomplices in the same evil that they suffered, perpetrated now on other human beings in other nations. All romantic relationships, all friendships, all marriages have ups and downs, serious problems, difficult hurdles. But if you and your marriage partner are both miserable most of the time, for months or years in your marriage, if you've tried marriage counseling, set yourselves free. No matter what your religion says about divorce, no matter what your families and your friends say about divorce, no matter the promises and the vows you both made when you did not know better, no matter if you have kids, do your kids like the emotional war of screams, curses, threats? Or do they like the emotional war of icy silence they suffer between the two of you? Drinking booze will not heal your broken dreams, your miserable marriage. Booze makes a bad marriage worse. Buying lots of expensive crap for yourself or for your partner, crap no one needs, will not heal your broken heart or your partner's broken heart. Hogging out on sweet shit, ice cream, candy, cake, sodas, cookies, will never satisfy your deep desire for affectionate, passionate sex and romance. We all make many mistakes in our lives. And if your marriage constantly feels like slavery, if your marriage feels like prison most of the time, set yourselves free. Do not blame the hell all on your partner. And do not stay together because you're afraid of being alone. Do not stay together because you're afraid you will never find somebody else for romance. Do not stay together so you can live in your bigger place with more money. Far better to live peaceably, alone, in a much smaller place with just enough money for your basic needs than to live in a $1 million mansion making each other miserable. I think of that beautiful, sad old country song, Satin Sheets. My mother and dad were miserable cellmates until death in the prison of their marriage. It was very hard on both of them. My dad became a workaholic. My mother became severely addicted to sugar and to buying much small stuff she did not need. If I had been my mother, I don't know how I could have coped being to my father, and if I had been my father, I don't know how I could have coped being married to my mother. I wish they had parted peacefully or had never married in the first place. And some couples become better friends after they no longer live together. United States federal income tax dollars have supported dictators, many dictators, dozens of dictators, whose soldiers have raped women in the presence of their family members, soldiers who have burned the sexual organs with acid and scalding water. U.S. federal income tax dollars have supported dictators whose soldiers have placed rats into women's vaginas and into the mouths of prisoners. United States federal income tax dollars have supported dictators whose soldiers have mutilated, punctured, and cut off victims' genitals, cut out eyes and tongues, injected air into women's breasts and into veins, causing slow death. United States federal income tax dollars have supported dictators whose soldiers have shoved bayonets and clubs into women's vaginas and into men's assholes, causing rupture and death. If we have a conscience, how can we pay 1 penny of federal income tax for such insane, evil cruelty? And one of the best ways to refuse to pay federal income tax for these horrendous crimes is to live simply below the federal income taxable level. And I've lived well for many years. I've lived well for many years below the federal income taxable level. I have paid not one bloody damn penny of federal income tax for almost 44 years. I refuse to pay for this government to rob, to torture, to cripple, to blind, to make homeless, to murder many millions of people worldwide. About 1/3 of the U.S. federal income tax dollar goes for war, past, present, or future. And if someone came to my door collecting money, and if I asked, well, what are you collecting money for? And if they said, it's for the local library and to repair roads. And I said to them, well, what else is that money going for that you're collecting at my door? Would I donate even a penny if almost 1/3 of the money that person collected went to killing neighbors down my street? Are our neighbors in other nations murdered by the U.S. government less human, less precious than the neighbors on our street? Carol Byers' husband, James Hapney, was shot in 1977 by his mother's next-door neighbor. He died from his wounds 8 months later. And James's mother immediately urged the family members to get guns and retaliate. But Carol, James's wife, knew even then she wanted nothing to do with revenge. And in court, Carol saw the man who was ultimately convicted of the crime and sentenced to life in prison. And Carol says, I remember thinking about how he had a mama and a young wife and babies of his own. I could not imagine his mother watching her child being put to death, or his children watching their father being put to death. I never wanted that. And years later, Carol tried to make contact with the man who had killed her husband. She says, I went to find him, to tell him I had forgiven him. And I found out he had just died. I'm sorry I never had the chance to tell him. And Carol says, we're told so many times that we're not supposed to forgive, that when people do horrible things to us, we should do something just as bad in revenge. But she says, those of us who know better, those of us who know the power of forgiveness, need to speak up. Every chance we get, we need to challenge the mentality that compassion is weakness. She says compassion is the toughest thing of all, but it's the only thing that works to restore peace in our lives. Why would a mother and a father want their teenage son to beat up, to bruise, to bloody another male teenager as a boxer? And why would a mother and a father want their teenage daughter to beat up, to bruise, to bloody another female teenager as a boxer? And why would a mother and a father cheer and celebrate their teenage son or daughter inflicting pain and injuries on another teenager? Why? Why would a mother and a father be proud of their son or daughter for being a boxer? Why would a mother and a father be ashamed of their teenage son giving and receiving body pleasure in sex with a male teenage friend? And why would a mother and a father be ashamed of their teenage daughter giving and receiving body pleasure in sex with a teenage female friend? Why would a mother and a father damn their teenage son making his teenage buddy's body feel good? And why would a mother and a father damn their teenage daughter's making her teenage female friend's body feel good? Is this world the lunatic asylum of the universe? I damn all boxing for males or females of all ages, but I celebrate affectionate sexual pleasure wanted and enjoyed by male teenagers with each other or by female teenagers with each other. Many years ago, my mother said about my dad, "I know him like a book." And a different time she said about my dad, "I will never understand that man if I live to be 100. And often in long-time relationships, we feel that way. Knowing someone well in many ways, but sometimes surprised and shocked by something that person says or does. And this is even true of ourselves. Sometimes we're surprised, we're shocked by what came out of our mouth or something we did on the spur of the moment. As a kid in school, I was chosen last or almost last for a team, but now at 77, I wonder if any of my living high school athlete classmates walk and exercise as much as I do. I changed. We can wake up. With much help from many people, we can change our lives. I'm strongly sexually attracted to certain lean, healthy, physically fit men, so I work every day to be lean, healthy, physically fit myself. Someone with a lean, healthy body living below the poverty level is far richer than any billionaire who has a sick, fat body. No lowrider cars, no luxury cars are as precious as a healthy, lean body. No high-tech gadgets, no computers, no expensive cruises, no million-dollar mansions are as precious as a healthy, lean body. The most important material possession we each have from birth to death is our body. So why do millions of people take far better care of their house than their body? Why do millions of people take far better care of their car, lowrider, luxury car, than their body? And why do millions of people take far better care of their grass lawn than their body? Why do millions of people take far better care of their pets than their body? My friend Seth Hoffman, who wrote and performed the song Live Every Day, and I open and I close my program with that song every week. Live Every Day is one of my all-time favorite songs. Deep meaning, beautiful melody. I told Seth years ago that when I die, if he's around, I want him to sing Live Every Day at my funeral. Seth used to live here in Albuquerque. He was a school teacher, a great singer in English, in Spanish, and in Yiddish. He now lives in India and Israel with his wife and their young son. Many thanks, Seth, for your wonderful song. And to hear his song anytime, go on YouTube to Seth, S-E-T-H, Hoffman, H-O-F-F-M-A-N, Live Every Day. Seth Hoffman, Live Every Day on YouTube. And the words, Live every day as if it were the last, because before you know it, time goes past. And life's just not that long. Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know. And one day, we'll all be gone. Taste the wind. Don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love. Let the music get you high. And when it's said and done, you know the sun will shine on. And learn all you can from the folks you meet, though they might be strange and sleep on the street. But in some ways, we all are wise. Give all your thoughts a fighting chance. Ask your fears and doubts. Would you like to dance? And open up your eyes. See the world. Let the world see you. Take the time to love the things you do. And you'll hear it when your spirit starts to rise. My longtime friend Chester in Colorado, 86 years old, wrote, "With the 2011 prostate cancer diagnosis, I was reading many books and web articles on the big C, that's cancer, and there learned that a protein in milk, casein, promotes the growth of prostate cancer cells. And incidentally, there's far more casein in cow's milk than in human milk." And Chester says, "I haven't touched the stuff in any form since. Casein is also fed to experimental animals in cancer research studies, since it can accelerate the cancer growth, and the researchers want the process to move along quickly for their research and study purposes." All stages of cancer accelerate with cow's milk, cheese, ice cream, drinking the milk. So if you think you might have any bit of cancer lurking in your body, and you know cancer can lurk in the body for many years, and it's not saying that cow's milk necessarily causes the cancer, but if you have latent cancer in your body and you consume cow's milk in any form, that can cause the cancer to grow faster at all stages of the cancer. Spanking and hitting children harms them. Spanking and hitting children does not make them better people. Spanking and hitting children can lower their intelligence. Spanking and hitting children causes delinquency. Spanking and hitting children causes more anxiety and depression. How can a kid concentrate in school if they're afraid of getting beaten when they go home by a drunken parent, or if they were beaten the night before? Spanking and hitting children makes the kids meaner. Spanking and hitting children causes more addiction later on in life to booze and to other drugs. And being a good parent depends on love and attachment. Being a good parent depends on setting a good example, not the threat of getting your ass hit. Children fear and resent the adults who hit them. And when children are in a clinic, hospital, or jail, they usually have suffered abuse or neglect from their parents or other caretakers. And even parents who seriously harm their children are sadly often treating those children as those parents were raised by their parents. And so it goes generation to generation until somebody says, the way my parents raised me and my grandparents raised my parents and so on was wrong. And I'm not going to do it anymore. Cursing children, slapping them, insulting them, calling them names, threatening them can cause as much or more damage than bruises on their asses. Countries where children are hit and spanked more have higher rates of adult violence and other crimes. We must love children more. We must love them better. Stop hitting, stop spanking any child. Our Mother Earth is our only home. And the worst place on earth for us to live is better than the best place on any of our sun's other planets. Think about that. The worst place on earth for us to live is better than the best place on any of our sun's other planets. No animal, no plant for millions of years have sickened and poisoned our Mother Earth as we human beings have, especially so-called educated, civilized human beings, so-called educated, civilized human beings, the past several hundred years. Our poisons have made Mother Earth sick and drunk. And drunk people cannot walk straight. Drunk people cannot walk steady. And our drunk Mother Earth sways and staggers from extreme to extreme, from more floods to more droughts, from severe heat waves to severe cold waves, record cold. Our Mother Earth staggers drunk on the deadly poisons we in this modern world are stupidly addicted to. Will we wake up? Will we make huge changes now, right now, in how we live to keep our Mother Earth from getting much sicker? We can't stop the climate crisis, but we can slow it if we give a damn, if we change our ways. Or will Mother Earth eventually shake us off? Will billions of us die horrible deaths as Mother Earth stubbornly stumbles drunk? The Earth as a planet will survive in some conditions. But how many of us, human beings, how many animals, plants, will suffer and die? Do we give a damn? We choose every day in how we live, what we buy, the size of home we live in, how we travel, how much we travel, what we eat, eating meat and dairy is one of the main causes of the climate crisis. We must not bullshit ourselves with space travel and living on other planets. Fantasies. They're absolute fantasies, as crazy as anything any religion ever dreamed up. We must not bullshit ourselves with addiction to virtual or make-believe crap on the internet. And many highly educated scientists swallow make-believe answers to the climate emergency and to the awful risk of nuclear war. These scientists, very smart, they know many facts and figures about this climate crisis, but how many of them have made big changes in how they live because of what they know? Have we made big changes? Will we start now? Thank you for listening, for watching. Please stop me on the street if you want to talk face to face. I love personal questions. Everything from death to sex to money, why I'm no longer a Christian believer. Any personal question, feel free to ask. To your health, fresh piss. Good night.
Tell all you love that you love them so, because even if you do, they might not know, and one day we'll all be gone. Taste the wind, don't let it blow on by. Sing songs of love, let the music get you high, and when it's said and done, you'll know the sun will shine on. And when it's said